It was the first time the girl helped Juliet respond to letters. She never expected that on her very first day at work, she would remove a piece of the wishing wall and discover a letter hidden inside that had been written 50 years ago. No one could have imagined that this half-century-old letter would completely change her life. In Verona, northern Italy, there exists the legendary Juliet wishing wall. It is said that if you write your romantic troubles on a note and attach it to the wall, you will receive a reply from Juliet herself. Many people believe this wholeheartedly, and Ella was no exception. Until one day, Ella noticed that the letters weren't disappearing into thin air, they were all being collected by a mysterious woman. Driven by curiosity, she followed the woman and eventually arrived at a hidden room where several ladies were busy distributing the day's letters. It turned out that the so-called Juliet's replies were actually written on behalf of the letters by these women. Intrigued and passionate, Ella decided to join this special team. However, on her very first day of work, she unexpectedly discovered a love letter that had been sealed for 50 years. The letter's author was a British girl named Claire, who poured out her pain, confessing her deep love for an Italian young man, Lorenzo, yet trapped in a dilemma due to her family's opposition. Ella was deeply moved by the letter and decided to write a reply herself. A few days later, a young man named Nick came to the office. He was Claire's grandson. It turned out that after receiving this long-delayed reply, Claire had mustered the courage to return to Italy in search of her former lover, Lorenzo. But the journey was far from easy. They visited many elderly men named Lorenzo, farmers, chefs, nobles, but none of them was the one she was looking for. Repeated disappointments left Nick increasingly anxious. He feared that his grandmother could not bear another heartbreak, and he blamed Ella for it. Yet Ella remained convinced that true love is worth pursuing. Along the way, the relationship between Ella and Nick quietly began to change. Ella gradually discovered that the seemingly cold and serious Nick had become so protective of his grandmother because he had lost his parents early. As they spent time together, Nick was moved by Ella's kindness and determination. One night, they talked about fate in a bar, and without realizing it, their hearts drew closer. But fate has a way of teasing. They finally found a villa, only to be told by a neighbor that the Lorenzo they sought had long since passed away. Nick's fears came true. Angrily, he confronted Ella. "How can you let my grandmother endure a second loss? You don't understand the pain of losing someone." He was eager to end the journey, unaware that his words had deeply wounded Ella. In fact, Ella had lost her mother at the age of 9. Although her experience mirrored Nick's in some ways, there was a crucial difference. Nick's parents had loved him, whereas Ella had been abandoned by her mother. This made her yearn even more for a light in her life to illuminate her lonely path. That night, Ella sat in her room, engulfed in a sense of loss and helplessness she had never felt before.